Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is May 21st. On this day, in 1950, the English gardener Vita Sackville-West sat down with her garden journal and noticed something she couldn't let go of. In her earnestness for horticulture, Vita wrote that snobbishness lives in gardens the same way it lives everywhere else. That we sometimes pass a plant not because it lacks beauty, but because it has become too familiar, too common, too easy to overlook. Once Vita asked, "What do we lose when we stop seeing something because we've decided we've already seen it?" May has a way of putting that question right in front of us. Right now, the garden is at its fullest, and we often find ourselves moving past whole sections of it without stopping. Maybe today is a good day to slow down and notice the common thing, the familiar one, the one you stopped being surprised by. It might still have something to say. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1715 that the French botanist Pierre Magnol died in Montpellier, a city he had never really left, and a city that had never quite let him in. In 1638, Pierre was born there as the youngest son of a generational apothecary family, a household that smelled of crushed herbs and drying roots. He earned his medical degree in 1659, and then, instead of practicing medicine, Pierre turned almost entirely to the plants. As a young man, he spent long seasons walking the Alps, the Pyrenees, and the islands off the coast, filling his journals. For much of his life, Pierre's biggest dream was to manage the Montpellier Botanic Garden, the oldest botanic garden in France. But Pierre was a Protestant in a France that was becoming Catholic in its bones. And when the position of demonstrator of plants opened in 1664, Pierre was the strongest candidate, but he was passed over. And when a professorship opened in 1667, he was again the most qualified, and again he was passed over. But through every rejection, he kept walking, and at the same time, he kept filling his journals with dreams and thinking about the way plants related to one another. Not just as lists of plants, everyone made lists like that, but lists of plant families that made connections that were not obvious to most gardeners. In his heart, Pierre knew the way a rose and an apple carried the same arrangement of petals and stamens. And he also knew that characteristics in plant families were shared and passed down. To him, it was history written into the shape of a living thing, and it was just waiting for someone to read it. In 1685, the Edict of Nantes was revoked, the law that had protected Protestants in France for nearly a century. Suddenly, Pierre had a choice, his faith or his life's work. He converted. Within 2 years, the doors that had been shut for decades finally opened. In 1687, he was appointed demonstrator of plants at Montpellier. In 1689, he published his masterwork. And for the first time in history, Pierre used the word family to describe a natural grouping of plants. And that's how he organized 76 of them, not by one feature, but by what he called the total composition, the whole shape of a thing. Before Pierre, botany was a list. After Pierre, it was a tree. 60 years later, Carl Linnaeus would arrive and build his famous system on this foundation, Pierre didn't get that credit, but he finally got the garden he always wanted when, in his final years, he served as inspector of the Montpelier Botanic Garden, surrounded by the 76 families he had spent his whole life arranging. Pierre died on this day, May 21st, in 1715. He was 76 years old. By then, the botanist Charles Plumier had already named something for him, a magnificent flowering tree that had been discovered in the Caribbean. Pierre Magnol never saw one bloom. But every spring since, when the magnolias open, often before anything else, before the gardener is even ready, they are still delivering a tribute to a man who gave up his faith to be allowed to do what he loved. And it was on this day, in 1904, that the Welsh paleobotanist Emily Dix was born in Penclawd, a small town on the Gower Peninsula in Wales, where the coastline meets the edge of coal country and where the landscape carries both. Growing up on a farm, Emily's family worked the land. She was bright and gregarious, and at 18, a scholarship brought her to the University College Swansea. There she found Arthur Truman, a geologist who had figured out how to date rock layers using fossilized mussels. When Truman looked at her, he saw something rare. He called her the most extraordinarily brilliant student he had ever taught. After Emily graduated with first-class honors, she found her subject, the fossilized plants trapped inside coal. 300 million years ago, the land that became Wales was a tropical swamp. There were giant ferns, towering club mosses, and ancient horsetails. And they all lived and died in dark water before being pressed into rock over millions of years. During the 1920s, the coal mines of South Wales were working around the clock, and Emily was granted access to go inside them, an unusual privilege for a woman. The mining engineers didn't just tolerate her, they admired her. As Emily descended, she looked for leaves on the walls. The further down she traveled, the more she realized that the fossilized plants changed over time in a specific order. One family of ancient ferns dominated a certain era. Then another family replaced it when the climate shifted. As the fossilized leaves changed across layers of rock, she could identify exactly where she was in time. And from her repeated observations, Emily created 9 floral zones, 9 distinct timestamps in the Welsh coal. As a result, a mining engineer could hand her a piece of rock, and she could tell him which layer he was working in and how deep the coal beneath it would be. From all that work, Emily turned fossilized leaves into a map. In 1936, the Geological Society of London awarded Emily the Murchison Fund, one of their highest honors. While the president gave a long speech about the high industrial value of her work, the archives note simply that Emily herself made no reply. Instead, she let the fossils speak. Then came 1941. While Emily was evacuated to Cambridge, German bombs hit London. Emily's records were destroyed. Years of field notes, her catalogs, and all her books. The fossils survived, but Emily's work did not. Afterward, she tried to carry on, but the war had scattered her colleagues, and the loss of the records had shaken something in her. In June 1945, just as the war in Europe ended, Emily led one last geological field trip. Then she stopped. At 41 years old, at the very height of her expertise, she suffered a complete mental breakdown. Then she entered the Retreat, a Quaker hospital in York, and stayed for 27 years. That's how a woman who could read 300 million years of plant life from a piece of stone spent most of the rest of her life in a quiet room. She died on New Year's Eve, 1972, back at home in Swansea. Emily Dix's 9 floral zones are still used today. And somewhere in a Welsh archive, there is a piece of coal with a fern pressed into it, a plant that lived before the first dinosaur took a step. And Emily Dix is the reason we know exactly when it lived. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear a poem and a garden memory from the American poet Robert Creeley, born on this day in 1926. Robert grew up in Massachusetts after he lost his father when he was 4. He spent much of his adult life moving from New England to rural France to a farm in New Hampshire. But no matter where he went, he was always writing. Robert once tried farming, and he wrote about that hungry summer in his collected prose. He wrote, "That was the summer we lived for the most part on chickens and blackberries, since that was all we could get a hold of. The garden hadn't come in yet, and what we had canned ran out in the early spring. It was all an idea, in a way, but we were certainly serious, and we were also young enough to bumble along without falling completely on our faces. There was a smaller garden for the kitchen, close to the house, but the big one was where we had the potatoes, corn, beans, all the vegetables we used primarily for canning." Robert's poems move the same way his prose did, in short, powerful lines. He once wrote, "I think I grow tensions like flowers in a wood where nobody goes. Each wound is perfect and closes itself in a tiny, imperceptible blossom, making pain. Pain is a flower, like that one." Robert wrote for 50 more years after that poem. The lines he wrote stayed short, but the feelings remain large. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Belladonna by Jill Johnson. This book is part of Garden Mysteries Week, which means all of this week's book recommendations feature tales of intrigue, plants, and poison straight from the garden. And Jill is one of my favorite fiction garden authors. In this book, Professor Eustacia Rose is done with murder cases. She has a partner, Matilda. She has her university work, and she is ready, finally, for a normal life. But then, a murder victim turns up, poisoned with hemlock, one of the plants that was stolen from Eustacia's own illegal garden. Belladonna is the second book in Jill Johnson's series, and by now, Eustacia feels like someone you already know. Brilliant, difficult, and completely unable to leave a poisonous mystery alone. It's a great read. And finally, here's something sweet. to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, in 1844, that the French painter Henri Rousseau was born in Laval. Henri was known as Le Douanier, the toll collector. By day, Henri worked the Paris city gates, but he spent his free hours at the Jardin des Plantes. There he stood for hours in the glass hothouses. Orchids dripped overhead, palms arched in the humid shadows, and ferns curled tight against the Paris chill. Though he had never left France and had never seen a jungle, Henri had stood inside those rain-streaked glass rooms long enough to feel what a jungle might want. And that's how he could return home and paint them with enormous, impossible greens, tigers mid-breath, and every frond thick with elsewhere. When Henri called them his exotic landscapes, the formal art world didn't know what to do with him. Of course, they mocked him at first, but Henri kept painting. And while there were 25 jungle scenes that made up his work, every one of them was built from memory and through greenhouse glass and whatever the light did on a rainy Sunday in Paris. When Henri died in 1910, he left behind a world no one else could have invented because it came entirely from what he loved. One heated room, one afternoon, and a window full of impossible green. As we close the show today, remember, Vita named something most gardeners know, but rarely say out loud. We fall in love with plants, not because they changed, because we did. One season, we're obsessed. The next, we're done. No reason, no warning. And sometimes, years later, we come back around. And that's what Vita noticed on this day, over 70 years ago. And it's still true. And she was right. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.